Hello there, and welcome to Duo Daemonologie as we continue our questions and answers series. My name is Elise Giamacco Carlson, and I'm introducing our show from an undisclosed location this week. While I'm speaking, please take a moment to like and share this video with your friends so that they can see what's going on. Thank you very much for doing that, for helping to bring Duo's message to more people, to legitimize demonology as a study of the lore and tradition of wicked spirits through the application of scientific methods. Even though tonight's format will be similar to last month's Ask a Demonologist, we're going to do something completely different. We're going to have a guest panelist, a very special guest who needs no introduction to most people. For the new people, you're not seeing double. There really are two of them. Hopefully you're not seeing double. It's only 8 o'clock. Joining the duo and of equal renown is Demonologist Keith E. Johnson, author of the books Paranormal Realities, Parts 1, 2, and 3. And of course, he is twin brother to our own Carl L. Johnson. So before we begin tonight, I'd like to mention several of the duo's upcoming engagements. Only 2 tickets remain for this one, so don't miss out. On Saturday, October 10th, Duo Daemonologie will direct a ghost hunt aboard the USS Salem, a battleship docked in Quincy, Massachusetts, titled Hunting the Sea Witch. Go to the Duo Daemonologie Facebook page to snag those last 2 tickets. On Saturday, October 17th, Duo Daemonologie will appear and present at Parafest, Maine in Vassalboro, Maine. The next Saturday, on the 24th of October, the duo will be part of a group raising funds to restore Wilson Castle in Proctor, Vermont. Help to preserve this treasure by buying a ticket for the ghost hunt from 7 to midnight. And last, on Saturday, November 7th, the duo guys will be found at the Portland, Maine Paracon in, you guessed it, Portland, Maine. So for tonight's program, paranormal research, specifically demonology, invites many questions, most of which seem to defy answer. It's easier to hypothesize and speculate than it is to define and quantify. Yet, every once in a while, we find we're on the brink of discovering or uncovering something amazing. New techniques, innovative approaches, and advances in detecting equipment propel us forward. How much progress have we made? What have we really learned about those subjects during the past century? We have with us here tonight 3 experienced researchers who would not qualify themselves as experts, although many of their colleagues do. They are demonologist and author Carl L. Johnson, theologian Deacon James Annitto, and guest demonologist Keith E. Johnson. We encourage you to submit your questions pertaining to related topics. And it is my pleasure to introduce the duo, or shall I say for tonight, trio of demonologists, Trio Daemonologie. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Elise.
Hello.
Thank you for the great introduction tonight.
Yeah, that was
Thank you very
comprehensive.
much.
Thank you. You said where we are now, yeah. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Duo Daemonologie podcast. And it's just not the 2 of us, it is the 3 of us.
Yes.
It's the 3 of us, yes.
Just the 3 of us.
Demonologist Keith E. Johnson, yes. So, of course, we are here to field your questions, if not necessarily answer them. We will endeavor to, drawing on our experience and our, hypotheses. But we're dealing with the unknown. In the words of H.P. Lovecraft, the unknown and unknowable. So, best we can do is hypothesize and speculate in most cases. But we'll try to zero in on some answers if we possibly can. So, whoever wants to submit a question, please come forward. Unless, do you gentlemen have a question?
Oh, no, definitely not. As at this point in time, I think Elise might have one for us always to break the ice, because sometimes that's what's needed. But for people that are watching, this is our podcast brought back. We took a little bit of a hiatus and we did a 1 question answer situation for the past few weeks to test our new technology. But on top of that, if you could please like, share, and as well ask a question, it would make this process a lot easier for us. And we would also like to keep continuing this podcast with our viewership. And with that, Keith, you have anything?
Well, it's nice to be here, and I appreciate the invitation. And it's I'm very proud and honored to join the group tonight. watched many's the episode of this, and now I'm actually participating. So.
And we're very honored, of course. So at least I am. And you've dealt with this person for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Prenatal.
Not preternatural, prenatal.
We have a prenatal association here.
Tell from preternatural into
Been
prenatal.
debating for a long time. So I think people primarily want to know about the reality of demons because we are a reality-based team. And, we're talking about something you can't quantify and isolate and look at under a microscope. Well, we hope to take measurements and be able to at least substantiate their existence. I am convinced that these spirits do exist, these spirit forms, these entities. They are non-physical presences. They're minds. They have a consciousness. Where they proceed, from whence they proceed, we can debate. We don't know. But there does seem to be something to it. They can be, to a degree, measured. You can actually get a reading of when a demon comes into a room. I say demon as a loose term, but these spirits, when it enters an abode, a room, occupies space, that can be detected because it disrupts the electromagnetic field. Something is there, something we can't explain. I think a demon is kind of like a poltergeist with an attitude. And that they can move things, they can manipulate their environments to a degree.
Yeah.
Now, it is thought and believed that demons have an agenda, that they are embattled against the human race and want to destroy God's creation, or at least reveal us. Reveal us as fallible, as very fallible. But however you interpret them, I do believe they are real. They're a potent force, and they can be invited. And in fact, for someone to be bothered by or oppressed by a demon, they have to extend the invitation. That's part of the lore of the demon, and it seems borne out. And I'm saying demon, I'm differentiating that from, of course, a human-generated spirit. If indeed there is a difference, it is thought that the remnant of the psyche, if you will, of a once living human being remains as a ghost, a spirit. It may or may not be aware of the people around it or the passage of time to some degree. Whereas a demon is immortal and inhuman and is not constrained the way a human spirit, limited as would be a human spirit. And they can come and go as they will. And generally they are antagonistic and malevolent. If there are demons that engaged in battle against the human race, we just never hear about them. Maybe they're not all malevolent. Maybe some of them are just not interested in this race we call the demons. But some of them are. Some of them are intensely interested in us and our doings as people, as human beings. And they do seem quite disruptive. It's very hard to say when how you know or how you sense a demon has come into your environment, into your proximity. But it's a subjective experience, and you feel it. You certainly do. When there was a demon in the room, if anybody has any sensitivity to unseen presences, even people that aren't particularly receptive, you kind of know when that thing's there.
Yeah.
I felt that before.
Definitely. I think with you guys combined, you have almost 100 years of experience. Yeah. So if not
dating our age.
Yeah, right. Well, no, that's admirable and respectable.
Yes,
but truly, I do believe that why I can quantify some of the cases that I've dealt with that were demonic was because of that feeling, because of that suppression, just the equilibrium fallout, the solar plex feeling very suppressive. So in all those circumstances where this dark force was there, this very evil, manipulative spirit was at the place of location, infects it, and
that's the way to put it. Yeah, infesting it.
But in that same tone, though, is like I felt this vibration, whatever you like to call it. I felt it, and out of all these other cases that I've done, nothing has ever come close to that feeling, to that dread that I felt. That fight or flight chemical reaction.
Right, something that wants you out.
Yes.
You get that impression, that definite impression. This wants you out.
Definitely. And I'm assuming you guys felt that certainly multiple times.
Well, Keith remembers a situation in which I was involved that I was speaking about several days ago when we went to the conference in New York, in Fishkill, New York. That event. The possession of Lucas.
Oh, yes.
We'll call him Lucas, and he at the time the subject was a 14-year-old boy, and he seemed to be undergoing fits of demonic possession. And I could never rule out that it was demonic possession. But Keith knows what that feeling was like. Remember when that would usher into the room, suddenly things changed?
I refer to it sometimes as the aura. You feel an aura. It would be like a 3-second delay. Like you knew something was going to happen. Either he was going to go under or something was going to start moving, some inanimate object. But you always knew about 3 seconds beforehand. And the same thing in the so-called conjuring house, we have felt that too. And it's like some physical means has to take place in order for it to manifest in our physical realm. And I kind of think of it as like turning a channel, a dial on a radio station, you get a certain reception. It's got to disrupt our reception somewhat, going to our dimension to manifest at all. It's got to drain energy. You do feel drained because it is manipulating the physical world and people and physical objects.
I think we're getting a question.
If you would like to go left or right on this, is that all right with you guys, gentlemen? Left or right on the question?
Yeah, now we have a question from Sandy Griffin. Does sleep paralysis have anything to do with demons?
What's your take on that?
Very good question.
I think sometimes it could. Of course, there's there's our physical symptoms, physical causes for that when somebody is in a hypnopompic state. Somebody's not quite fully awake and they tend to hallucinate. It can be terrifying for the person who's experiencing it, even though it lasts only a few seconds. But I think that in some cases we are spiritually and psychologically vulnerable at that moment. And sometimes evil spirits will take advantage of that. So I do think there is a lot of validity to people actually experiencing that.
Most definitely. How about you, Carl?
I think they're two different things. I think sleep paralysis is a natural physical phenomenon in that the brain will secrete neural paralyzer to keep us from thrashing around at night. And when one awakens and you're kind of half awake and can't shake yourself out of the stupor, you can't really move, but you become more and more aware that you're not dreaming, but you can't move for a while. That's pretty... I've experienced it. It's pretty spooky. I don't think it has anything to do with, in and of itself, with demonic presence. I don't think the demon is holding one down. Now, somebody's a little more vulnerable in that half-awake state, yes. Yeah. But I just don't see them as being related. I think it can occur on its own.
Yeah, and I definitely will agree. I'll probably be in the middle between you both on that. Because I definitely think it's plausible. I think that if you are being affected by something like especially a demonic force, there could be a lot of physical repercussions that happen due to the force being involved with you. But one of the things I'd like to jump on with a theory that still really hasn't been disproven is for the longest time, the pineal gland has been thought of the third eye, right?
Yes.
And the pineal gland is still really undiscovered of what it does besides releasing melatonin. And guess what melatonin does? That's for sleep. So if the pineal gland is our third eye and it does release melatonin, there is a possibility that can be affected and manipulated by
the pineal gland has long been associated with extra sight, extra sensory perception,
The third eye in Eastern religions, the enamel.
Yeah, I just thought of it as being the third eye.
So if that is true, because it hasn't been disproven yet, because they still don't understand that gland to the full extent, that's always a possibility.
So I think my favorite answer is James's answer. Let's say, I like it. So it could have something to do. The demon could take advantage of that state.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, right?
More receptive and more vulnerable.
And this could lead to another question, unless Mama picks another question for us. Basically, if you are being influenced or oppressed or demonically possessed by this force, I look at it into the same format that if you're dealing with stress and negativity every day, and of course not in a preternatural stance, but you're dealing with that thing, it does have repercussions on your body. If you have this evil, pure negative force in your body,
our culture is
it's going to do things
high
to your
stress
body,
generating
right?
one. Yes, I believe Elise had that experience of neural paralysis. She did. It was.
I've had sleep paralysis, but I did not know what it was because it happened a long time ago when I was in college. And the only explanation I came up with is that I was being abducted by aliens.
Well,
Because I would hear a very loud buzzing sound, and then I couldn't move. It would start, at about the same time every night, and I'd be just like, oh, first couple of times I panicked. After that, I was just like, well, here we go again. I woke up this morning. I'll wake up tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So just kind of relax through it.
Yeah, it's the show Evil. I think you actually suggested that.
Yeah.
It was a great show. And one of the things is sleep paralysis was one of the things on that show. Yeah. And this is actually really good. This is a psychological thing too, is that if sleep paralysis happens, wear something on your wrist. And if it's not in your dream, when you're in the dream, you're in a dream. But if it shows up, you're not in a dream because it's there.
Right.
Because your body doesn't come accustomed that you have something on your wrist when you go to sleep.
We do wear that. Sandra and Keith and I've worn.
So you guys know.
Right. Little bracelet there that.
Yeah, that's bonding. Yes.
Especially when we deal with we do deal with retaliation. I do believe so. We can be affected. So it's always good to make sure that we're not being affected.
Okay, I was going to comment on my own sleep paralysis experience because it's fascinating, but now we don't have time for it because we
please do.
I just wanted to line up the next question for you.
Thank you. Well, very briefly, I was 13 years of age and I woke up and oh boy, I remember this vividly. I didn't know anything about a neuroparalyzer. I had no body from my jaw down. I mean, I had no sensation. And it was like, this is interesting, and then the panic started to set in. Suppose this is permanent. At first, it was just, for some seconds, it was just amusing. No, I couldn't feel anything from my jaw down. I could not will myself. I startled into full awareness. I tried, and very gradually over the next maybe half hour, I couldn't look at a watch or anything. The feeling returned slowly throughout my body, and then I became more at ease as it traveled down, but I could not move. I knew that. I bolted right awake, but could not move. I said, I wonder if I'm going to school today, or if I won't have a body to bring into school, because I don't feel anything. And it was uncanny. I now see it as something of, I think it was a physical, reaction. But
it's not the time you wet the bed, was it?
I wouldn't have even known.
No, that's just.
I couldn't have appreciated it. If I wet the bed, I would have had to wait some minutes before I could even appreciate the sensation. Now, the next question, why does God allow demons? So this is from Melanie Walsh Sullivan. And why does God allow demons to attack believers?
That's actually a good question. Before Keith answers that, we actually did a one question about why is there evil. So we kind of gave our answers on that. So it's great that Keith's here because guess what? We have a new input on it.
Right.
Why?
Another perspective, perhaps.
Yeah. And so much of this, of course, is a mystery.
Yes.
It is, cosmic mystery. But I do believe that God allows this to a certain extent, but while allowing this, he will give us a way of escape and his protection. It's not removing us from the storm. The total calm in the storm is his protection during the storm. And of course, it has a lot to do with free will. And it gets very, very complicated, of course. And there's the angelic realm, which, according to Judeo-Christian beliefs and other beliefs too as well. The angelic realm had free will to a certain extent at one time. And some of the angelic realm abused that. And of course, that's where we get the rebellion and the demonic realm. But it's like God allows this, and we can look to him for protection and for our help, as our savior. And I do believe that's why God allows us to grow and to do these battles, which he is there to help us with. And which reminds me of a case I've been working on for a long time, which I'll get into a little later in the program.
Yes. Well, what would the band Rush say about that?
What they say?
You know what they say. I will choose free will.
Yes.
Well, my comment is briefer. I'll just quote my favorite Clint Eastwood line from his movie Unforgiven. Deserve's got nothing to do with it.
It's a good point.
Yeah. It just happens. It's unfathomable.
Yeah.
God allows it. And if it is God allowing it, an awful lot is allowed. A lot of expansive, just happenstance on this planet we inhabit. Things just happen. Sometimes things just go
Yeah.
wrong. It's as blatant as that to me.
Yeah, I have to agree with both opinions in some format because I think, of course, God doesn't necessarily allow evil. I think that's something that humans unfortunately stumbled upon, even though Lucifer did fall due to pride. And you could say that is some form of evil going against your maker. But in some form or fashion, I think humans have a lot to do with it, like volition or free will.
Humans are capable of immense evil on their own.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And I think
on our own.
I bring back to something we really didn't answer, of course, and I think we can't answer. Would evil exist if humans did not exist?
Would evil exist if humans
Right.
did not exist?
So I think that's a very hard question to answer, but I think I look at it in the way of all the things that I've gone through, like all the bad things that I've gone through. Now I look at it as if those things didn't happen, I wouldn't understand how life is so much more enjoyable because of the blemishes that I've seen, that to realize that there is true beauty. So that's my take on it.
Okay, comprehensive, unsettled answer. Next question and answer. Let's really disagree with Keith, just for the sake of doing it.
What's the next question? Do we have a next question? Oh, look at that! Our own from Mama Elise.
What does she ask?
What are attachments?
That's a loaded question. What are attachments?
Well, in the form of spirit attachments. That's when an entity, actually almost like a lamprey, attaches itself to you. Say you're in a home that is maybe spirit infested, and say you're a paranormal investigator, and this is just one example, but this paranormal investigator has been cussing it out, come on, show me what you got.
Yeah.
And nothing really fantastic happens. But then that said investigator finds that he or she has an attachment. Something has decided to piggyback them and actually follows them home and accompanies them home, starts to infiltrate their life. And now that's just one theoretical example of how this could happen. But there are many ways attachments can happen, not just through divination or summoning. Sometimes somebody's just in the wrong place at the wrong time and something latches onto them. It's attracted to somebody for whatever reason. It reminds, maybe it reminds the entity of someone and it seeks this familiarity, or maybe just that person's vulnerability. It's got to grab that person and kind of leech off them, kind of parasitic like that. But attachment is a spirit manifestation that actually follows somebody and attaches itself to them bodily and spiritually.
So it's like a remora that attaches itself to the back of a shark or a stingray, and it feeds off. It becomes symbiotic. It feeds off its host. In my experience with them and what people have told me, people say I have an attachment. They can see it to me. I don't see it myself. But, I'm kind of here. But people say that it's not as strong, and I believe that it doesn't really have a cohesive strength to stay with the person. It's weaker when it follows them home. It may, things may get moved around. They may see something in back of them in the mirror, which is unsettling. But I just think it dissipates. It doesn't stay very strong, unless I've heard of 2 situations where somebody went to an abandoned asylum, and brought something with them, and it was horrendous. So depends on where you pick it up, like a virus. It depends on where you were, where you contracted it. But it's just, to me, it's more interesting and not disturbing.
Yeah,
maybe because I haven't experienced it full throttle.
Well, I definitely believe, and I think it is a widely thrown term and misunderstood and misused, but I believe I actually dealt with an attachment firsthand. And my experience was, of course, not the natural jump of this is paranormal,
right?
That this is actually just life happening. Like I had money in the bank, went negative. I had an apartment, I was kicked out. I had a car, it broke down. So I had basically a domino effect of these things that occurred to me. And of course, still naturally, of course, okay, this is not paranormal. This is just life. I'm going through a hunky-dory kind of like everything's falling apart, and it's not great. But I think one of the things about being in this field, regardless if you believe it or not, I do believe some people that have clairsentience, clairaudience, are clairvoyant, And I had people reaching out to me saying, either I posted a picture on Facebook or they just reached out to me saying they had a vision. And I had multiple people that did not know each other reach out to me and said, James, were you in a case? And did you do something?
Right.
And point to Keith saying, and of course you're saying, Carl, as well, is the reason I got that is I kind of allowed that invitation to happen. And I think in the same form of attachments, there's some sort of influence attachment that has to occur. Either by asking a question, being there, provoking. And I was there with the ego. I was there with the mindset I can't be touched.
Maybe not by your own volition, but you invited it.
Oh, definitely. I did. I was provoking that day.
Well, there.
Very, very much so. I like I said, I thought I was untouchable. I let the ego get the best of me, and we all have good ego. There's bad and good ego, but it was not very good that day.
Right.
I thought I'd never been touched, and never been scratched, and that one time I let my guard down and started provoking. I had a domino effect of things that happened, and I really hated to jump to the conclusion that it was an attachment. But when there's so many moving parts that point to something like that, what are you going to say? Especially when you have multiple people with set abilities that don't know each other, and they say exactly almost the same exact thing to me. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And
There's some
nuance to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, if that answers the question.
Oh, well, I think we have a follow-up to that. So
We do.
what can happen? Oh, Elise, let's hear your beautiful voice. What is the question for us?
The question from Shanna is, what can happen if you invite someone with an attachment into your home?
Ooh, yeah. Well, that depends. Sometimes nothing will happen, but sometimes if you yourself have to be, because something like this is always looking for new lifelines, something to attach itself to. And I have another victim here I can lynch off of, and something like that. If that person has negative vibes, that can really, really spread out and cause a multitude of problems. And before you know it, somebody else has an attachment. And, Shanna actually is a personal friend of mine. And, if I just take a moment, of course, just want to take a moment that I'd like to ask special prayer, whatever your belief system is, be it Christian or whatever. Shannon and her family are wonderful, wonderful people. And they have been dealt, terrible blows one after another. A lot of it having to do with paranormal and, bad tragedies, misfortunes. But it seems to, talking about attachment, it seems to have been following this family. And my personal opinion is it could be generational. But every place they live, something seems to happen. In fact, the most recent residence they lived in, they moved out, they sold it. They were having terrible problems there. They sold it. 6 months later, it's up in the market again. The family moves out immediately. And then the next family, the same thing. So our hearts go out to Shannon and her husband, Jim. Wonderful, wonderful people. Jim's a pastor, and they've had more than their share of misfortunes. Beautiful, wonderful, faithful family. And I think it's for this reason that there are forces that are really coming against them, trying to knock these people down, because they are very spiritual, devoted people. And I think that's why they've been victimized and chosen.
But you feel they'll come through it, that they can prevail, that it's
we're praying that they do. I mean, I've been talking about this with Shannon and Jim since 2004. So, I mean, you hear about these cases, you see these movies like, the Amityville Horror and The Conjuring.
It's over in a second.
Yeah, right. It's right over. Right. But it's the duration. Like the Perrin family really went through 10 years. Like Jim and Shanna and their beautiful daughters, they've been through this for quite a duration of time. And that's when it really gets bad, when it's so drawn out and lengthened. So if we could have some prayers and personal thoughts for them. Jim and Shanahan, thank you so much. God bless you, Shannon.
God bless you.
Yeah, I have also seen when an attachment in a room or attachments catch on like wildfire. I mean, I generally don't think they're that virulent and that powerful, and they dissipate as they are passed on. They don't come on strongly. But I was in a house in New York State, West Hurley region, and we were talking about Ouija boards, spirit communication. Things started to go A picture falls off the wall. That's what happened. Something flew off the table. It was kinetic, and these were attachments. You know, they were gaining in strength because people were scared at that time. It was an eerie atmosphere. I wasn't afraid, but I could see what was happening there. And there you had these proliferate attachments. That's all I could call them. You know, so it can be disturbing. I think they tend to lose power with time, and as they are passed on.
I think it also has a lot to do, like we talked about, like the laws of attraction kind of thing. Like,
Oh yeah,
if you feed into it,
right.
It's gonna digress and kind of jump from maybe the person that it's not leeching off of, and realizes, okay, I can leech off you, which I won't get into too much to it because you guys answered it perfectly. I think our next question kind of has something to do with it as well, but the line of work with what we do, and the question is, don't you ever get frightened by this type of work? How do you know something won't follow you home? Well, you guys have been doing this a hell of a lot longer than I have. So Keith first, of course.
We take special precautions. We always pray. You know, sometimes we get a little lax, and you know, it takes a little nudge to remind us. But
Like what happened to me?
Right. You know, potentially dangerous these situations can be, and so we pray beforehand. Try to place ourselves into a state of grace, especially reading Ephesians 6, the armor of God, and we try to make our house like that's our, you know, temple to God. I mean, it's a humble home, but I mean, it is our temple to God, and we've been very, very fortunate in not to have ourselves. We've been known that we're being watched. You know, they let us know. You hear the 3 knocks. I heard that on Labor Day some years ago. 3 knocks that night, and I looked outside. Nobody's there. I prayed before answering the door, but you will get these little signs here and there. But we do keep in prayer, and not that we're perfect, but we do try to have that for spiritual protection around us.
Carl?
Well, getting back to it, attachments and all that, it's a hostile environment you're going into. I got to say, in my own experience, I always feel some level of trepidation going into something unknown, not knowing if it's going to be harmful, not going to be evil, be it something at the level of attachments or something more formidable and serious. I'm always a little afraid when you come in, because it's that element of the unexpected. I don't know what's going to happen minute to minute. Are we going to see something dark and really oppressive that's, you know, you don't know. That's also part of, you know, to be honest, is part of the excitement too. What's going to happen next? Is this the big case or the big situation? We're really going to find something that makes us wonder if we can stand our ground and stay there. But there's always some uneasiness when I go into a haunting, you know, an infested situation that, you know, people are reporting things are being seen, objects are being moved around. Yeah, it's unnerving because you're going into something creepy and mysterious. Yeah, but it's part of the allure too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your unnerving statement. I think it's more unnerving than scary or frightening to me, like, because you don't really, like you said, you don't know what situation you're going into, and really, my mindset is, specifically when I've become more mature doing this, basically is how can I assist this family, and that is more frightening to me because you're dealing with people, you're dealing with them in their house, and how you can affect it, you know, because it could be a bad affection, even though you might not say or do anything. Like, you go in that household, things can get crazy, and that's effective to them. So I think that makes me more unnerving, like what could happen in this situation. As far as things following me home or anything like that, I think from my experience, I learned that if I don't have a good mind or a good head on my shoulders, I should kind of step away, recollect myself, because I have always thought, if you can't help yourself, how can you help others? So I feel like in that mindset, I won't do it if I don't think I could be helpful. And in that same token too, is I also live, and I've not always been like this, but more so since a lot of my circumstances that have happened in my life. But I tend to go to bed, reflect, and leave everything that day, and then go to a new day as the new day. So I think that's also helpful too, because if you, like I said, back to laws of attraction, if you have a negative mindset, what are you going to attract your way? So if I keep positivity in my life, negative things will try to trample on me, of course. But I'm also putting out as what I can give in a positive standpoint. So I don't think I necessarily have to worry. But of course, like somebody like back to people that affected since like 2004, and I like to talk about him a lot because it's really a big thing to talk about. Padre Pio was oppressed.
Pio, yeah.
He had the greatest faith in God. He never stepped away from his faith, but he was always oppressed.
Yes, he didn't have an easy run of it either.
He didn't, no. But he every day had his prayer life.
Yes.
Had his love for God. Knew agape existed. He knew God loved him, and that is enough for me to get by every day.
Right.
Plus, I have my son too.
Right.
If I feared my son being affected, I think that's where that fear would attract.
Oh yeah. Right.
So plus he's a light in himself. So I always think of him positively.
Yeah.
So.
But sometimes when you are devout, you've experienced this. That's when you become targeted, like Shannon.
Yeah, you think it would get easier if you're on the right side, but that's not. You face unique challenges.
Since 2003,
challenges.
and I've been in touch with them about this since 2004. Shannon and her family, they've been targeted, I think, because they are devout people.
Yeah, and they want, and sometimes for a demonic, that is the biggest temptation to try to waver somebody's unguiding, their loving faith for God.
Right.
And if they are able to do so, that just shows you how much power they have against us in temptation.
Right. Yeah. Well, I also think that if somebody is under the umbrella and the protection of the Holy Spirit, they also have license to banish the Spirit. I mean, many people would not. Yeah, they're going to face unique challenges. They're going to be oppressed to some degree, and that seems merely inevitable. But they also can command that spirit to depart, and the spirit has to listen if it's something of ill will.
And I think you do need help with that sometimes.
I don't say
other people to come in.
Not that it's banished for good.
Yeah,
but
definitely need more people in the boat.
Yes, right. Strike the numbers.
Yeah, strike the numbers always wins.
Well, Duo Daemonologie asks, why are they called demons? That sounds like an Elise question if ever there was.
That is definitely an Elise question.
Yeah.
Because that goes way back to ancient Greece. Of course, the name demon. It was actually
Daemon.
Daemon, the original spelling and pronunciation. Daemon was a wise spirit. It could be a guardian spirit even. It wasn't necessarily considered an evil spirit. But you elaborate on that, Carl?
Well, I tend to call them non-corporeal entities, and I don't think that's going to catch on.
Demons.
Get back! You're non-corporeal.
Non-corporeal.
Yeah, but we just lack the scientific nomenclature. There isn't clinical terminology to apply to these forces, not yet, till I devise some. But it's an ancient word in our Western culture, our hemisphere. It is more and more incorporated with these evil spirits. And you can't get away from that. They're called demons for a reason. And of course, with the advent of the William Peter Blatty novel and then the movie, The Exorcist, now, that's so incorporated into our zeitgeist in this culture. It's, demon is an evil spirit and we can't get away from that. Be going, you demon, and even, the Bible is, incorporates the word demon, but it used to be devil.
Right, devil and evil spirits.
They didn't differentiate between demon and human spirits there.
Yeah, that's easy.
Well, I guess we're stuck with demon for a while, huh?
Yeah, well,
that's been accepted in our culture.
And the same concept of demon, as you said, they were non-physical beings. So as demons are in our Western standpoint, are non-physical.
Yeah, it's interpretive.
Right.
So it is interpretive. But
ghost was known as, human spirit was known as a shade.
Hey, how about if we change this to duo and non-corporeal?
Doesn't quite have that ring.
Yeah, I don't think it has the ring of Duo Daemonologie.
It sounds like a hemorrhoid cream.
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
But yeah, demons are very old in nature. And
there are no young demons. No, there's
not.
They're not being born.
To be honest with you, you guys were talking about that they were called evil ones or devils, but that really has a lot to do with the New Testament because it was written in Greek. And guess what?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Greeks believed in demons, and there's
Yeah.
some form of nature of combination there, in forms of civilizations. So
It's an impactful word. It's gonna have power. When people say, you're a ghost hunter, and it's okay. I watch that on television. But say you're a demonologist. Whoa, what are you guys into? But it's a powerful word now. It does have a presence to it. So I guess we'll use that for the time being. Yeah, I got to share a story before we go on to the next question. You got speaking of older demons, younger demons. Okay, there are three demons. They're conferring. How are they going? You know, three demons walk into a bar. Now, there are three demons, and they're conferring about how to entrap a man's soul. You know, and you know he's wavering in his faith. He said, or you know, the human race, let's say. And the youngest demon says, you know, tell him not to believe. Tell him not to believe in God at all. You know, get him not to believe. And then there's a more mature demon. He said, you know, well, you know, tell him not to believe, but not to get baptized too. You know, tell him to avoid baptism. Has nothing to do with it. You know. And then there's this like a million-year-old demon. He's really been around. He's a crusty old demon. And the old experienced demon says, no, tell them to believe, tell them to repent, tell them to be baptized, but tell them to do it tomorrow.
Oh, very good. Good point.
That is.
Because they'll never get around to it.
You're right.
Tell them to do it tomorrow is okay.
Yep.
That's my story. Anyway.
That's a good story, though. It's
Yeah.
true.
Now do it today, what you can put up till tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So at the close of the show, they're still called demons.
Definitely.
We haven't changed that. Look at this. Oh, another question from Duo.
Oh.
I have another question. How does a house or place become demonically infested?
That's a good one.
Generally by invitation. Invitation being a loaded term. You know, somehow that demonic presence is invited in. That could be through
Would you break the clockwork over here? Keith goes first.
Yeah, but I like my. But I know what Keith was going to say.
that twin
Twin
telepathy,
Yeah, what Keith was going to say is through
Never mind.
invitation is why they, you know.
I'm not going to say that, Carl.
Well, okay, I've had my piece. Now
Through invitation, sometimes this does happen. No, what a lot of times it is invitation, but a house can. This is another way. When somebody who has a demonic attachment or has been possessed dies in a house, very mysteriously, but for some reason, it somehow gives that demonic entity a legal right to be there.
That property.
Right, on that property. And which someone's mere legal ownership is not going to nullify. It has to be a spiritual ownership too. It has to be taken away from that spirit, their legal right to be there. And now it's very mysterious. We don't totally understand why, but it does seem to give the demon a legal right to be there unless it is removed spiritually. And sometimes it is generational too. You know, I mean, innocent people, of course, they have had nothing to do with this. It's just somebody in a past generation has promised this this spirit that you will have the next generation. You know, and
Can that carry over though? You're equating it with legalism, this demonic presence.
I think often it does. I've known people who are into various religions, you know, and just to name, you know, like some of the Nigerian religions and such, where a next generation has suddenly been harassed. Like I've known like a young woman, she got into Buddhism. Suddenly she started hearing this voice: "You are mine. You are mine. You're promised to me. I own you." And it turned out her mother was of the Santeria faith, and the grandmother before that.
So they
you know,
perform magic.
right? Yeah. And she was supposed to be the next generation, which she didn't accept, but it did start. The spirit did start harassing her.
Yeah, for due to prior commitment.
Right.
It's
right,
like
right,
it's like if you have a debt to the mafia is not going to stop
right,
at you. It's going to go after your family.
right, exactly.
In the same sense.
Exactly.
Because they want what they're owed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Payment must be due.
Yeah, and earlier when I said invitation, that doesn't necessarily mean somebody performed a conjuration and brought the demon in. It could be as simple as the unresolved conflict on a pretty much subconscious level, some severe tension and trauma that has been suppressed and withheld, and maybe it gets projected, and that negativity brings in the negative force. You know, like attracts like. So it's not necessarily you extended a formal invitation, but you may have despaired. The person, the subject, may have despaired and given up on life, and that can invite the hostile forces and give them that power.
I agree to both of those. I think it could be a form of invitation. It could be a form of communication, or it could be a form of what Keith has said as well, generational, or due to a soul that was in the process of being controlled and then death, which makes me wonder: is Anneliese Michel's soul still lingering in Germany?
Mm-hmm. Yes, is she's trapped in limbo somehow?
My personal, I mean, just my personal opinion is she's not trapped. She's free, after death.
So,
but the spirits do remain.
I actually, you're gonna laugh. I actually do. So, you ever see the movie Hostage to the Devil by Marty McDonald or whatever his name with?
Malachi Martin.
Yes.
Yeah, Malachi Martin.
So
I've read the book. I haven't seen the movie.
So the documentary Hostage to the Devil, that director, and I can talk about it now because I didn't have any involvement. The church didn't want any involvement, and I would say that the church was approached. The Old Catholic Church was approached. The United States Old Catholic Church was approached about it because they wanted somebody, which most Roman Catholic priests or exorcists.
This is an interesting kind of thing.
Won't perform exorcism on camera,
right?
Because it is a personal thing and it's a ritual that is deemed not to be necessarily on camera.
Yes.
So this director approached us. They were making Hostage to the Devil Part 2. And they wanted us to, of course, do exorcism on somebody from Germany. The reason is they wanted them to bring them here because guess what? Exorcisms in Germany are illegal
now
because of the happening of death of Anneliese Michel.
Yeah.
But also they were legal until somebody else died. And then they banned them again. But what my connection to Anneliese Michel is the lady seeking help, which I do believe she was dealing with things because there was enough data, video, pictures, like certain things that were on that video.
Right.
She slept in Anneliese Michel's bed.
Oh, really?
For our viewers who are not familiar with the story of Anneliese Michel,
if
you've seen the Possession of Emily Rose, that movie.
Well, they were friends, family
That's
friends.
basically the story.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Gee.
Just to think, she slept on Anneliese Michel's bed, and after that,
I feel kind of eerie about that myself.
that's crazy.
It's
Crazy.
I don't know if I can.
So if you ever see a Hostage to the Devil Part 2, and that is the story, I guess I gave it too soon. So hopefully, I didn't sign anything, so I can't get in trouble. But yes, it's crazy to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
We're not casting that, are we?
No, like I said, the church denied any involvement because they don't want to film exorcisms.
Well, yeah, they really can't. That hasn't changed.
Exactly.
So.
Another question. Can you explain this is from? Yeah.
That's Father Thomas. He's actually a priest with us.
Okay.
Out of Texas.
Can you explain the different forms of possession, i.e.,
transient,
perfect possession, as they progress? You?
We can stay on the same format.
Well, transient possession, unlike what was portrayed in the movie The Exorcist, most common is transient possession.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's not possessed all the time or under another personality all the time. It comes and goes in spurts, through provocation or whatever. But perfect possession is a very strange, and of course, Malachi Martin did speak about that, write about it.
Yeah.
That's a situation where the demonic entity has become so integrated with that person and just controls them so much that it's not necessarily a raging, snarling entity. It's not bestial. It's more like a part of your person. You can't tell if that poor person is possessed or not at the moment because they can act perfectly normal, even while under a state of possession. It's become so integrated. And usually that's, an attachment that is somebody is accepted and integrated.
And it's very dangerous too
Very
at that point in time. The body starts not decomposing, but it starts withering away.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
Disintegrating, yes.
Right, definitely.
It's a vulnerable state at that stage, and pivotal too, because the person can still be pulled out of that if they receive the proper coaching and intercession at that time. You usually need somebody else encouraging one.
And of course, there is the classic infestation, oppression stage.
And then there's also, of course, which is not widely talked about, but obsession as well, which I think is one of the more higher ones that people don't talk about, because especially now this day and age, even though it's not necessarily the way you think it is, but people are obsessive about demons nowadays, more so than they were.
Exactly.
Yeah, unduly interested in the topic.
Right.
So
exactly. I knew a woman, Carl and I both knew a woman years ago that actually started because this entity was kind of doing a persona where it was from the 18th century. She actually started dressing like that when she was not under possession, but she's like started talking in the
I know you mean,
olden,
yes.
the olden language.
Really?
Started holding tea socials and everything with the neighbors. It was something very quaint, but it got.
I refer to the yeoman,
Yes, the yeoman in
the village.
It got very obsessive.
And then there's also too, even though this is not a demonic nature, there is also another form of possession that is in the DSM, which is a psychological ailment. So of course that has to be always warranted that is not that before you jump to the preternatural causes.
Right.
Because people can be possessed within their own confines of their mind.
Well, would a psychotherapist recommend exorcism?
I think that's dependable. Like back to the
Depends
point
on the
where we were talking about
psychotherapist,
the father of medicine.
Yeah,
performed
there's
it. So it's
dissociative
possible.
identity disorder and all those things.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, hopefully that clarified somewhat, or at least discussed it. Another question do we have coming up?
Well, I just wanted to make
Sure.
one comment about a fact that Shaina brought up. She noticed that the door behind me opened on its own. I don't know if
I
you guys
noticed it,
noticed
but
that
now it
while
wasn't
I was on
before. I
the
didn't see
screen
it.
earlier. Yes, it most likely was my cat. I do not have a
no.
haunted
I
closet like Brenda Costa. Just wanted to say that for anybody watching that also saw that door over there. That was-
That's the afterlife right there.
Can you account for your cats though? Where are they now?
Oh, they're always
They're so
skulking around
lovable.
here
They probably
somewhere.
came up and brushed against
Ooh, that
you
is
or
a great question. You want to ask that question from Shiona?
That question is, how much is obsession more about the individual's mental health as opposed to an entity possession, if that
Yes.
makes sense?
Yeah.
I think you just discussed that, really.
I think the majority of the time is with somebody's psyche. It's a psychological thing. I think a majority. However, it is not that uncommon for it to be an exterior entity that has invaded that person's, that person's psyche, and even that person's aura.
Mhm.
But I mean, it happens by not uncommon. I mean, it happens more than I think people realize.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think the majority of the time it is psychological in nature.
Mm-hmm.
I think they go in tandem. There should be rules against it. If somebody has a mental disturbance or that unresolved conflict, they should be protected, but they're not. They're more vulnerable. So it's really nigh impossible to differentiate between the, mental anomaly, some disruption in the psyche, and actual spiritual invasion. One begets the other. Which one came first? I think it would have to be the mental disturbance, that something that has not been successfully resolved, and I think then the person becomes vulnerable. I don't think a healthy human mind could be attacked, assailed with devastating results by a demonic entity or spirit of any form. So there has to be something that's gone wrong and something that's disturbing the person for that spirit to even start to invade. But I think they are virtually indistinguishable in the early stages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then
How's that for a vague answer?
Oh, definitely. And what's it called? I just lost my train of thought. So basically, back to kind of ring on both you guys, where what we have talked about multiple times, and of course in Fishkill most recently, is that every case that, especially specifically you or I, and I don't know about Keith, but every case that we've come upon had some sort of trauma involved in why the situation was occurring. And I really truly believe because that trauma, it created mental health issues, which either created that obsession of wanting something to be there, or allowed for that oppression that to occur and then to manifest into possession, where that person finally gave up and allowed this entity to take over. So yeah, definitely, I would say mental health has a lot to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. You see, our friend Melanie is back, and she has an interesting comment. I don't necessarily agree that people invite demons into their lives. I was a practicing Christian, and one day all hell broke loose in my house, specifically after I had said out loud what a great and happy life I was living. Literally the next day, a negative entity showed up. Okay, now that doesn't sound like the demon was invited. It sounds like it was assaulted.
Right.
Which begs the question, can a demonic entity well, I wouldn't say live, but can it function? Can it exist apart from a human mind? And apparently it can.
Wow.
So that's something I, can't successfully answer. That sometimes it's
right.
just there, showed up, and this is a case of that. I think it's much more rare, but this.
Yeah, well, she probably unwittingly provoked it.
Yes.
And
By
then,
being
like,
happy
there's
by
good
saying that, yeah.
as you were saying earlier to me when we were conversing, there's bad provocation, but there's good provocation as well. Somebody, you say you are a believer in Jesus Christ, you accept him as your Lord and Savior. Demons will get provoked by that.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, they will get provoked, and sometimes they will target Christians.
Yeah.
And doesn't Melanie's comment illustrate that this demon, this entity, was existing apart from any human mind, that's interaction.
Right.
It just seems like a rogue demonic form that was resentful of the happiness in that house and just showed up there.
Well, I also think too, and this is not, of course, for me to assume Melanie's life or judge, but once again, there could have been something traumatic that happened earlier on in her life, and that was the keystone, the skeleton key of allowing that door to open. Even though it wasn't the now, sometimes the past can be the affection.
Yeah.
Why it happens.
So
there's many reasons.
Here we have a real conundrum that defies my theory. Just it was there. It didn't like what she was saying, and there it was. So that indicates that it can just exist independently. It was there, didn't like what she was saying, didn't like her happiness, and then things were flying around. And I believe that.
Right.
Similar to a case in which I was involved, except the family was not content and happy, but they didn't seem to be provoking it. As I got to know them better, they kind of were.
Like my friends Jim and Shanna in Kentucky, they never did any kind of intentional provocation. They never did any kind of divination, never collected with a Ouija board or anything like that. And yet they've been being attacked systematically, not just them, but their pets. They can't keep pets very long, cherished pets, but suddenly the more love the pet is, it'll seem to be targeted as well to get at the family. So.
Yeah, so there are cases that I find unfathomable. They just don't make any sense to me why this thing can show up and try to disrupt, and sometimes succeed in disrupting the household. There are principles at work that we can't really understand.
And I want to say, Mom didn't click it, but Melanie said, I think in context to what we said, isn't that kind of like blaming the victim? See, the victim, I understand the victim mentality. I understand that, but we also have to understand, so as people that have been involved in cases, you can be a victim, but if you stay in the victim role, you're never going to overcome. You have to become the warrior. You have to want change. So we're not necessarily blaming the victim. We're saying that you cannot be a victim. If you want to overcome this, you have to get out of that mentality. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Yeah, but also Melanie was not being taken over by this entity. It wasn't afflicting her to the point where, it was circumstantial. It wasn't changing her personality.
Well, I don't know if she's talking about in her circumstance necessarily, but do you also believe that for a victim to get over it, they can't be a victim anymore? They have to be the person that...
Yes, and that can go along with many situations where somebody's being victimized. There's a point where they have to take a stance and say, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. Doesn't mean everything will automatically change, but they've made that conscious decision that they're not going to be a victim.
Can't wholly rely on the intercessor to change things and fix everything. They may guide you. They may say, I've had this experience or that experience, but eventually the person has to stand up against it.
We've probably all been on cases and situations where, there's the client is so desperate for help to come in, and you do like a cleansing of the house and everything. You try to give them the, right guidelines to call upon God and angelic powers. And the next day they're calling you again, it's back. I mean, these things they're not always corrected overnight.
No, it's definitely not. But I'm not going to say this towards my clients badly, but a lot of times they call me back. Did you listen to that? No, we didn't do it. And why not?
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you go to the doctor and the doctor says you got to take your medicine every day or you're not going to live. If you don't take your medicine every day and you die, is it the doctor's fault? No. So I'm not saying that it's not going to be like that, but and also the same reality too is if you don't listen, it's kind of like leading a horse to water. The horse It's not going to drink the water unless it wants to, right?
Right, exactly.
Have any follow-up? I do see some questions up there. Or comments. You know, but if somebody has a direct question.
No, Melanie said it made me closer to God. That's important. Like my first time I ever dealt with a demonic case, it brought me closer to God.
Yes, right.
It really did.
So it seems like the demonic influence was thwarted.
Yeah.
It didn't get what it wanted.
No, I think it got the opposite. For me at least, it was maybe mending to bridge the gap further between me and God, because my relationship with God earlier in my life was very distant, and if not expunged to the full extent.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I understand going through something like that, and then even though I wasn't necessarily the victim or the subject in that role, it really did make a large impact in my life, and of course to my connection to God.
Right.
Validated.
And that's wonderful too.
Yeah, it is. Just like Melanie, it made her closer to God, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So at this time, do we want to continue to field a question or two? Or we want to
It's
discuss,
9 o'clock. Unless Mama has anything, or Keith or Carl, you guys have anything.
Now, I should make Keith more prominent. Keith is way in the background here.
You can sit closer, Keith.
Over
there. Yeah. And now you're in the forefront.
Yeah. You want to see my left, Carl?
Oh, now you can't see me at all.
No, you can't see you at
I
all.
didn't know that.
Come up here. Come up here.
Oh, he's coming here. Gets the towel.
Face the camera.
They're also available for parties.
Yes, we are.
Playing here all week.
We are the trio duet.
One final note that we do have here is from Shanna, that she's asking for a prayer for her family, especially for protection, as she is by herself, and especially for her husband Keith. You may tell them why. So you guys may want to do that when you get off the air. Or
I think we will. In fact, I'm sure we will.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, Mama, thank you for the great introduction. Keith, thank you for joining us.
Very well.
My partner Carl, as always, thank you. Remember, guys, if you did not listen to the introduction, we only have 2 tickets left for the USSCL on October 10th in Quincy, Massachusetts. Get them while they're hot, I guess, is the saying.
Yeah.
So I hope to see you guys then.
The favorite two to get those tickets.
And we won't announce our next show, but I will say, beside, of course, our lovely Elias, Carl, Keith won't be joining us next week, but we would love to have Keith back. We will actually have Nella's special guest, who has been recently on television, pretty primarily, and who will be coming to talk about a certain subject with us.
Yes.
So make sure you guys stay tuned this weekend for the announcement of who our next guest is and what our next topic is. You guys will love it, and I hope you guys have all a good night. Thank you guys once again, and Elise, thank you.
Thank you so much, Elise, for organizing, hosting, and all that, and thank you, listeners and contributors, commentators.
God bless.
God bless.